Okay, in this section right here, what we're going to do is focus on animating our gun. Now, you know inside Unreal, all the weapons have some sort of animation, be it the animation where the gun is actually selected or put away, to the fire animations and the alt fire animations. In this particular lesson, we're going to take a look at creating 6 different animation cycles for our gun. Let's talk about them. First, we're going to create the select and the deselect, and the deselect, by the way, is called down animation cycles. So with select, the weapon is going to swing up and into your hands, and then down, it's basically going to be the opposite animation. Then we're going to have the standard fire. So you're going to have your entire weapon is going to recoil back, and it's going to rotate upwards just a little bit, just to simulate a recoil and the force of the gun when you fire it. Then we're going to have the alt fire. And the alt fire, I wanted to make it a little bit trickier just to kind of give you a look into how to do more complex animation, with moving parts, etc., for your weapon. So this is kind of the theory behind how the alt fire works. The barrel begins to spins faster and faster, and it begins to generate so much heat as it starts firing, and we want to keep that heat kind of in here as best we can, and we want to keep it from going outside into a radius around the gun because that could affect anybody else that's standing there. So we have these things that are called deflector shields. We've got 2 on this side, and we've got 2 on this side. So when we engage alt fire, what's going to happen is the deflector shields need to be deployed. They need to come out and then separate. While that happens, the barrel needs to start spinning up until it's into its full spin cycle. So basically what we're going to have are, 3 different animation cycles that we're going to use to make up this alt fire. We'll have a spin up where the shields will deploy and the barrel will begin spinning. Then we'll have the actual alt fire. During the alt fire, the barrel will be spinning and the gun will have some jumping around motion, something kind of like that. Well, not exactly like that, but just so that it looks like it's, kind of difficult to hang on to. And then when you let go of alt fire, we'll have the spin down, which will be the 3rd of those animation cycles. So that gives us a total of 6 animation cycles that we're going to need to create for this guy. Now, the animation that we're going to do here is simple animation. Don't expect to watch this and walk away as a character animator or even with an in-depth understanding of animation curves, etc. It's just all about keyframes in this particular lesson, and it's very simple animation stuff. If you want more complex animation, check out some of the 3ds Max VTMs that I've done, especially some of the ones I'll be doing on down the road a little bit. They'll definitely make you happy. Okay, but back to our gun here. First thing I want to talk about, the weapon itself. Well, actually, before we talk about it, let's go ahead and do something else. Let's clean up our scene real quick. I've still got lights in here left from the last lesson, so let's go ahead and get rid of them. I'll come up over here and click on the display panel. We'll come down to hide by category and uncheck lights, so you can now see all of the lights. Now let's just delete them by coming up here to the select by name. I'll go ahead and uncheck lights, invert the selection, grab them all, click select. Now all the lights are selected, and I'll hit the delete key. Okay, so now all of my lights have been deleted. Now, first thing we need to talk about as far as the animation is concerned is about all of these pieces. Pieces. Problem is, right now we don't have a bunch of pieces. This weapon is a single object, and that is good when we're ready to export, but it poses a problem with the animation that we want to do. Now, most people that build weapons for Unreal Tournament actually animate the vertices, and I'm not wanting to animate vertices. I want this to be a little bit more elegant. Okay, I want us to actually be able to animate all of the pieces individually. And then once we're done with that, basically in the next lesson, I'm going to show you how to write a Max script that will take all of your different pieces and put them back together into a single piece and export it out for individual frames for our animation for inside of Unreal Tournament. So you'll get to learn a little bit of coding inside of 3ds Max, which is cool. So we need to break this thing up into pieces. So to do that, I'll simply come over here with the gun selected to my Modify panel. You can see I still have an unwrap UVW modifier in here. Let's go ahead and collapse the stack. So I'll simply right-click, come down and select Collapse All. Tell it yes, I do want to continue. And now our UVs have been folded over inside this editable poly, which is cool. That's what we want. And we've gotten rid of that modifier. In other words, we've gotten rid of history. Next thing I want to do is come in and grab sub-object elements, because when this gun was put together, remember we started out by modeling all of these pieces individually, then we attached them all together in the UV section. Well, the model itself, remember, is all of the different elements that were put together. So we can still select them. What we have to do, though, is come into the subobject element type. So I can simply click this, or I could have come down here and clicked element from there as well. Now you'll see that as I come in here and I click, I still have the individual pieces that I had before. So let's go ahead and start out by selecting this piece here. And then over here in my Modify panel, I'll just come down to Edit Geometry, Detach. Click Detach. I'm going to get a Detach dialog box. From inside here, it's asking me what name do I want to give it, and do I want to detach to element or detach as clone. And no, I don't. We'll just simply say OK. Now this object is a standalone object. Let's go ahead and grab this guy right here, detach, and I'll just continue all the way around. We'll grab the shield in the back. Let's detach it. Let's grab this guy and detach it. And let's grab the barrel and detach it as well. Now, of course, I still have this piece in here that I could detach, but there's no real reason to. I'm not planning on animating it, so it's fine the way it is. So with that, let's go ahead and come out of subobject mode by clicking Editable Poly. And now you can see that my gun's still selected, but it's a little bit shorter than it used to be as far as the bounding box is concerned. That's because, as I said a second ago, these are indeed now separate objects. The next thing that I need to do before I actually start animating the gun is make sure that all of my pivot points are in their proper location. If I come in here now, here's a little demonstration, and select my barrel, look where its pivot point is. It's not in the center of the barrel. It's actually offset up a little bit, and that's not good. If I come up here and grab my Rotate tool, if you watch what happens over here in the perspective view when I rotate this, it goes up and through my deflector shields. You can probably figure out real quick that that's not the animation that we're trying to achieve. So I'll go ahead and right-click to cancel that so that it's reset. So I need to have my pivot point in the center here for rotating my barrel, and I also need to have all of my pivots for the entire gun situated somewhere back here, but again, still center for the barrel so the barrel can rotate, but locate it back here so that I can rotate the entire gun for doing the recoil. So to do this, and the recoil, of course, is during the fire, I'm just going to marquee select all of my objects, come over here to my hierarchy panel, click Effect Pivot Only, and I want to start out by taking the pivots and moving them to the center of the barrel. So I'll do that by coming up here and clicking on the Align tool, selecting my barrel, and I want to align the X position, Y position, and Z position of all of my current selected objects. I want their pivot points moved to the target object, in other words, the guy we selected with the Align tool, to his center. So you can see it is right where we want it. It's in the center. So I'll go ahead and say OK. And now what I need to do is take this pivot point, or all of these pivot points, and move them straight back somewhere into this area so that I'll be taking into account the animation I'll need to do for the recoil. And as long as I don't move this pivot point up or down, it will stay centered, as you see right here, for rotation around the center point of the barrel. So I'll just come up here, move this guy straight back, somewhere right about there. And now let's go ahead and turn Effect Pivot Only off, and let's check to see how everything works. First, if I come over here and I select my barrel, grab Animation tool, or my Rotation tool, and rotate it, it's now rotating the right way. Of course, if I rotate too much, you can see the problem with our texture in there. It gives a little bit of a wobble appearance. We talked about this earlier when we actually made this texture. It's just because this isn't centered and because of our shading in there. But it's actually spinning properly now. And if in the right view, I come up here and select everything and rotate, you see that I'm in good shape for actually doing the animation for the recoil. So let's get busy and start animating. The first thing I want to do is set my frame range down here to 80 frames. And I'll do that by coming down here and clicking on my Time Configuration button, or I could right-click anywhere in this area, actually. I get the Time Configuration dialog, and from in here, I will set my animation length to 80 frames and click OK. And we're now ready to begin animating. So let's start by turning the Auto key button on. I'm going to move 10 frames ahead, so I'm now at frame 10. And I'm going to start first by doing the spin-up cycle, actually. So let's grab that guy, this guy, Move tool. And so between frames 0 and 10, I want the deflector shields to open. So maybe to about right there. Yeah, that looks good. I'll grab the two deflector shields on the other side, and they will open up to perhaps right about there. So if I drag my time slider now, you can see that's the animation I've got so far. Now between frames 10 and 20, let's grab the back two deflectors, move them back. Not so far, maybe about right there. Actually, that's still pretty far back. By the way, I don't know if you guys can hear that. I'm actually by myself at the moment recording this for you, and it is storming bad outside. A lot of thunder and lightning, so hopefully we will not lose power. I do have a lot of ups, but I do not have ups on some of this stuff. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take the front two deflector shields, and we will move them forwards in Y. And maybe about right there, and let's see what we have for animation. So they open and deployed. Okay, very good. During this time, I also want my barrel to begin spinning up. So for that, let's go ahead and select our barrel, rotate tool, and I'm going to use angle snap. And what I want to do is I want to rotate this guy exactly 72 degrees, whether positive or negative, it doesn't matter as long as you stay consistent with that direction through all of the rotation animation of the barrel. But I want to rotate it 72 degrees because all of my little barrel chamber holes right here, I've got 5 of them, okay? 360 degrees for full revolution, divide it by 5 will give you 72 degrees. So if I wanted to go from this barrel to the next barrel hole, I need to rotate 72 degrees. So I'll right-click on my angle snap up here, get the dialog box from in here. You can see angle is currently set to 5, and 5 will not fit into 72 properly. So I'll simply change it down to 1. Close this out, and I'm ready to go ahead and do the rotation. I still have auto key on, so keyframes will automatically be placed down. You can see there are none down here at the moment. So I'll simply rotate, and I'm going clockwise direction in the front viewport, so it's going to be negative 72 degrees. So now the entire animation that we have is spin and open and deploy. So that looks pretty good. Now, between 20 and 30, we're going to use that as our actual alt fire. This is after you've spun up and everything's cool. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and rotate this guy another negative 72 degrees. So give it to me, 71, 72, oh, past it. Kind of awkward with everything going, the processor gets a little slow. So negative 72 degrees. Reason is, basically, when we actually code this in with the alt fire, it's going to be going so fast, repeating this animation, that it's going to look like the barrel's spinning. So it's just an illusion. That way we don't need to rotate this guy 360 degrees. So there's our spinning that's going on. And then between 30 and you would think 50, we're going to spin down. But I'm actually going to do the spin down between 30 and frame 49. So at 49, let's go ahead and come over here and rotate this again, negative 72 degrees. And the storm outside is getting a whole lot worse. Okay, negative 72 degrees. And the reason I did that to 49 as opposed to 50 is because at 50, between 50 and 60, I want to have the original, or at 50, I want the original position of the gun, everything. As far as rotation, I want that reset back to the way it is by default. Position reset back the way. 50 to 60 is going to be my actual fire with the recoil section. The reason I need it to all start out from the regular default rotation and position is because if I'm running along and I hit fire and this barrel has already been rotated 72 degrees at the beginning of fire, the barrel is going to twist in a real nasty fashion, and we don't want that to happen. So I can go ahead and come over here and grab this rotation key at frame 0, shift click and drag it all the way over here to frame 50, and I'm happy with that. Now let's go ahead and do our animation to have the deflector shields close back up, and there's no reason to come in here and have to reanimate it by hand. We can just copy keys. So here's when they were closed, when they slid out, when they slid open from each other. Now I'll just grab this guy right here. Between 20 and 30, I told you this is our fire sequence, so we want to hold them open. So I'm simply going to take this keyframe, shift click and drag it over to 30. So now you can see it's just holding open, nothing's happening. Now I'm going to do the animation in reverse. We'll grab this keyframe over here where they slide back in, or excuse me, back together, and we'll simply holding shift down, click and drag it over to 40, and then I'll grab the one at the very beginning, shift click and drag it all the way over to 49 for a copy of it, and shift click, drag it over to 50 as well, because remember at 50, I want this guy to be completely closed back up, and then we'll go from there between 50 and 60. If I don't copy this key over here to 50 and I just leave it at 49, then the fire between 50 and 60, there would be some interpolation starting back here at the keyframe at 49, and that's not a good thing. Okay, so we just had our first little power flicker in here. Man. All right, so let's see how this looks now. So opens, there we go, spin, closes back together, everything's done. Looks absolutely excellent. Now, let's go ahead and do our fire, which is between 50 and 60. Now, what I want to do for this area is come in here and select all of my objects. And on 50, even though I've got some keys down, everybody's not been keyed here. And if I start animating like at frame 60, the movement of this gun, in other words, its final resting position for the actual fire, the problem we'll have is some keyframes that haven't been set, like on the body of the gun, will get their first key set back at 0, and our interpolation for fire will actually start there. Not a good thing. So what we're going to do is basically select all the objects. I had to reach over and turn off some equipment. Sorry about that. Select all the objects, right-click on my time slider, and I want to place a position and a rotation key for everybody at frame 50. So I'll go ahead and click OK. And then I want the gun to be back to this position at 60 at the end of the fire. So we'll simply click and drag it over to frame 60, like that. Now what I need to do is go one frame forwards and animate my recoil, because I want it to only take one frame to give you this quick recoil back. So I'll go ahead and hit Auto Key at frame 51, grab my Move tool, move this guy back and down a little bit, and then my Rotate tool, let's give him a little bit of a kick, something like that. And while we're in here, let's go ahead and make the front of this look kind of fancy. Let's give a little bit of recoil to the actual barrel and the deflector shields as well. So we'll select those guys, come over here to Move. I'll switch this into let's go into a local coordinate system, because right now moving it with the screen coordinate system is not going to work for us. So switch it over to local, move it back in the Z-axis to about right there. We'll turn Auto Key off, and let's see what our animation looks like. Okay, so basically we start, boom, and it comes back. So that's the animation. Kick and back. All right, so that leaves us with just a couple more things to do. Let's go ahead and do our select, and then we will come back in and do the down and a couple other little things, and that will actually conclude the section. So for the select, we've got the gun in its natural position right here at frame 60. So I'm simply going to move this guy, shift-click, drag him all the way over here to 70, because when we get to 70, we want the gun to be up in this position right here. So the next thing I want to do is go ahead and hit Auto Key, move over to frame 61. I'm going to use my perspective view to kind of simulate like I'm inside of Unreal. Maybe something like that right there. And now let's come over here to Rotate. And then let's just take this guy and rotate him up. We got to select everything. Get in trouble not doing that. Select everything, and then rotate him down. Maybe something like that right there. And then over. Maybe something like that right there. And I'm also going to move him down. Let's go and switch back over to our view coordinate system, and we'll simply move him down. So the animation then looks like that, which is not a good thing. It looks like we've got some keys missing in here somewhere. The very bad storm that we've got going on right now is not being helpful. Now, let me show you what is going on. With everybody selected, I'm simply going to turn Auto Key off, grab this key over here. Let's just grab the one at 70, kill it. Grab the one at 60, shift-click, drag all the way back over to 70, and you can see now that my gun comes back up. Can you figure out what the problem was? Hopefully what you said was, well, a minute ago when I only had the front of these two selected, that was when I took my key from 60 and copied it over to 70. I didn't copy any of the keys on the back of the gun right here. So that's not what we wanted. So now we do have what we want. And so now to make this gun be put away, all we need to do is simply, with everything selected again, make sure that's the case, come over here, grab this keyframe at 61, which had the gun down, and simply shift-click and drag it all the way over to 80, and you'll see now that the gun actually gets put back away. Okay? Now, of course, we could spend some time fine-tuning this and all, but I'm keeping it relatively short because of the amount of very bad weather outside right now. Okay, so moving on. One more thing we can come in here and do real quick. Let's make the gun look like it's got a little bit of problem, or not. Let's make the gun look like it's difficult to maintain while you're in the middle of the alt-fire segment. So if you remember, we're actually firing back here between 20 and 30. So you've already seen how I can come in here and with every single thing selected, simply right-click, drop down a position, and we don't even need a rotation key. I'll just do position. Click OK on that. Move on over here to frame 30. Right-click, and we'll do a position key on that as well. And then
all we need to do in this area is simply turn animate on, so I'll have auto key on actually, and we'll just use our position right here, use our viewport as if we were in Unreal, and I'm just going to take this guy and say, all right, move him back just a little bit. So we've got that, and then we're going to move him forward maybe just a little bit, and over here we're going to move him back just a little bit, just to create a little bit of motion in there while you're firing the gun. Then go back through it and just see, okay, how far is everything kind of scrolling over? Maybe I don't want it to go quite that far over, so I can move it back in just a little bit. Over here, not bad. Over here, perhaps just a little bit too far. Again, we can move it back in a little bit. So now this is kind of the action that we get from the gun. So it looks a little bit difficult to maintain. So let's turn auto key off. Let's go all the way back here to 0. Let's go full screen, deselect, and this is what we've got. Deploys and spins up. Actual alt fire, kind of jumping around, barrels are spinning. Spin down, close back in. Then our actual fire sequence, boom, and it comes back forwards. And then we have select, and we have deselect. Okay, so that's it. That's all I wanted to cover for this section and how to animate this guy. In the next section, I'm going to show you how we can put the whole thing back together, and then we can start exporting the files out, and then we're ready to go ahead and move over to the world of Unreal Tournament. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot. Bye.